It looks like we are live, and hello, and anyone who is joining us this rainy, cold on-tier evening. Welcome to Grace Under Pressure, your favorite broadcast that features Dagmar. I don't know. I was trying to think of what makes this one unique. Because there's lots of great broadcasts out there across the known world. This one just happens to be the one that I'm co-hosting. And we feature former royal consorts from throughout the SCA, and they generously give us a couple hours of their time to talk about their stories. So tonight we are interviewing Duchess Eleanor de Bolton, who we now have in on tier, and we are keeping her. We are still confirming our guest for next week, so watch this space. And now it is time to introduce our hosts, and I'm going to start by introducing my amazing stunt host, Ashaxi, who is a Laurel in on tier and is filling in for Sir Joel, who is back from playing Army, but is still feeling pretty tired, and rather than force him to put up with us, he is off camera watching the comments and doing the comment moderation, which we usually have somebody doing. So thanks, Joel, for doing that quietly. And for the rest of, actually, I don't even know if he's on there. That's right. I don't think we got that figured out, but it doesn't matter. He's there in spirit. And for everyone else, please send your love to Ashaxi, who has been filling in for Joel for about a month now. So thank you so much.
Super fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm going to introduce Duchess Dagmar, who is also a Laurel and godmother of my giant son, and all around awesome person. So
thank you, all accurate. I'd also, as always, like to extend a special thank you to the Sisters Interview Network and to Ashaxi and Rifkin for hosting Grace Under Pressure, and for fulfilling my dreams of being a Facebook broadcaster. I've had that dream, I don't know, like literally since August. And it really means a lot to me. And I know it means a lot to our guests to be featured and to give them an opportunity to show us all of the great photos that they have of their coronation clothing, which that's been what I've mostly gotten out of this, is like, wow, look at how everybody's pretty clothes. So we are all in a mood tonight. I just want to mention, I think it is in part because in the Pacific Northwest, which is where we all are, we have the weirdest weather in the country, and people come to the Pacific Northwest to study the weather, not to enjoy it, to study it, because 2 weeks ago it was almost 80 degrees and it is under 50 degrees today, and that is, it's cold, you know. And we called January in our area because it's not going to get a lot warmer before the actual start of summer. So I think that's part of it. But also, I don't know, the world's sort of on a precipice where we're waiting to see what's going to happen in the coming weeks with COVID and with the availability of the vaccine. And if you're watching this and you haven't been vaccinated yet, please, right now, while you're watching, go and find an appointment and get your vaccine, because we love you. So now, to introduce our guest, Duchess Eleanor currently resides in the Principality of the Summits, where she most recently reigned as princess. She is a Duchess of the Outlands and has also lived in North Shield, and but none of that matters because we have her now. I just want to emphasize that she has been part of our on-tier refugee program, where we bring people here and then we don't let them leave. So
she is also our current arts and sciences champion of on tier.
Yeah, she knows how to really make a good first impression on a kingdom by just, you know, reigning and becoming their arts and sciences champion. It's awesome. So thank you and welcome, Eleanor. Yay.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for classing the join up a bit. That's really the biggest takeaway. And, you know, it's funny too, like when you meet somebody and you go, wait a second, why haven't we been friends forever? And that's definitely how I feel about Eleanor. I mean, probably because you don't live anywhere near me, but, you know, it's the SCA. This can change. So our first question that we love to pose is just to ask about your SCA origins, what brought you to the SCA, and just a little bit about your persona. And, if you want to just fast forward to now, who you are now, that's also fine because you've had a long history and we have only like an hour and 15 minutes. So, you pick how much of that you want to include.
So highlights, quick snapshot of the last 25 years, or even longer. So I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my mom and I when I was in high school, we did the craft fair circuit, selling fiber arts and quilts and things like that. And with that, I was at somebody's booth geeking out about some dragon clasp for a cloak. And I was like, oh my goodness, the geekery. And they're like, do you know this thing called the SCA? I'm like, no, it sounded fantastic. And they said, okay, if you go down Lomas, you'll hit this one park and there's fighter practice on Sundays. I'm like, sweet. So I went down there and, did the standard thing. I gave my number to a couple of people. Didn't hear anything. I was like, okay, I will be the brave introvert and I will try again because this looks way too cool. Went down, gave my number out again, didn't hear anything. And I was like, eh. And so then when I went up to Colorado State University for my bachelor's, I was like, okay, I need a social group. And so I joined both the gaming group, and thankfully there was a really strong chapter of the SCA going on at Colorado State University. And the gaming group was way into like Vampire Masquerade, which is awesome and fun, but I'm not really good at like in the moment interactions. And the SCA had a lot of like, it's like, I can do all of my hobbies in one place. And there's like knights in shining armor and I can spin around in dresses. And it's like, yes, I'm sold. And so thankfully the group there in Fort Collins, Winterhafen is just awesome. I mean, there's Titus and Lamurai, and then Rosalind and Thorfinn, there's Rashika and Tumant. I mean, and just like a really good, supportive, awesome community. And so that's where I spent a chunk of the time and learned the ways of the SCA. Oh, let's see. Persona, I'm mostly settled into kind of 14th century England, France. And that's because like within the first 3 years, I made like all the clothes. I went from, Saxon, Celtic, bodiced Scots, like the whole range of things. Really settled on Norman for a while because bleos were really popular in the 90s. And, but then settled on the Cotardie. And it, a silly way to choose a persona, but I like the dress.
And I don't think Eleanor, that's silly. That's not silly.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you feel lovely in?
Yeah, I mean, it moves well. It's, it works for me.
I mean, imagine picking a persona and you hate the clothes. That seems counterintuitive. So I think it's good to pick something on the basis of what makes you feel good.
Yeah, and some of the other hobbies that I have that I enjoy, like ceramics and textiles and things. There was some really cool stuff going on with that. At the time, I was really big into quilting. And so like there's the whole Tristan and Isolde quilt that the Victorian Albert Museum has, was kind of like the first Trumpunto stuffed quilting. And so there was a lot of fun things to tie into that time frame.
That's great.
So you were really lucky that you already knew how to sew and you were able to just whip yourself out all the cool clothing.
Yeah, it was fun, but yet at the same time, it's kind of that double-edged sword because, you show up and you're like, what are we doing here? And it's actually in Albuquerque that I, kind of got the brief overview. And so I'm like, sweet. Went to the library, checked out the book. I think is like Costuming Through the Ages, the one that has all the diagram and measurements. I'm like, I got it, and drafted out, made this awesome like side lister and showed up. And then everyone was like, oh, well, you must know what you're doing. So.
Oh yeah. So in my other series, we talked about that yesterday, about when people show up, and there's a newcomer, and then there's people who know what they're doing, and there's a big range in the middle. But if you do show up, you look good, you have great costumes, or you're competent because you bring skills from outside the SCA, what does that do to the way people perceive you, and also when you're a hot chick at the same time, what does that also do in terms of the level of distrust that we extend to women who are attractive in the SCA. And there's this sense that we distrust their intentions, or that they're not, that their worth is, it's sort of like the more attractive they are, the more negatively we perceive their skills, or whether or not they are doing things or gaining things on their merits versus their appearance. And it's really toxic. So I know we've all talked about this before, and we've talked about it in past episodes of this series too.
Yeah. I think I was fortunate because I did my Princess Diary style makeover, or kind of dangerous beauty training sequence, whatever you want to call it, while I was in the SCA. So when I first started, and you'll see the pictures, I was like, I don't know, I was like super geeky, and so I think that gave me maybe a little bit easier entry, but I've definitely run into that later on.
Yeah.
Just there's can be some serious viciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't, I'd like to think that we're getting better, but I think what it takes is people acknowledging that it happens and saying it's not okay. And then being there for young women when they come into the SCA and demonstrating the way they should be treated. And I know that some of this is fallout from our society at large, that this is not uncommon, but come on guys, none of us are in high school anymore. Let's leave that stuff there. But those habits are really hard for some people to overcome. And, I know part of it too comes from, a lot of us in the SCA are dorks and geeks and nerds and whatever flavor. So there is always that sense that if you're too chiseled, popular, perfect, whatever, there is distrust of that, because a lot of us maybe weren't treated very well by people like that in places where we were vulnerable, like high school or wherever. But the reality is a lot of things happen to people before they show up to the SCA, and they may have also been an awkward, gangly dork most of their life, and suddenly sort of blossomed or found their place, and suddenly their beauty has come sort of screaming out because they're in this wonderful society full of people with a common interest. We don't know, and to give people the benefit of, not just doubt, the benefit of grace, to thrive in the SCA. So sorry, this isn't my interview, Eleanor, but you and I had a whole conversation about this, and it just, it was so compelling. I really feel like we can't talk about this enough.
It's kind of like breaking that cycle of trauma, right? Because, I got shoved into a locker in gym class every single day because the gal next to me, in my brain, I classify her as the pretty girl, the popular girl. And so, it's very easy then when you somehow become in a position of power or authority to start that cycle again. And, the self-awareness just to say, no, we can stop this here and treat each other as human beings and love and care for everyone,
It reminds me a lot of a group that I'm in now. I'm in this metal group, like metal fans. And and not a band. I'm in a group of aficionados. I'm not in a metal band. That would be very cool, and I am not that cool. So, but when I was a kid in high school, a lot of them were the people that we would associate with metal were very homophobic and used the F word a lot, not fuck, the other F word. And also, in fact, some of them were pretty racist too. And I know why kind of sociologically that happened, but it really affected the way I viewed these bands, many of whom would not have embraced those same views. And it really pushed me away from what should have been a great fandom that I should have been able to develop, especially for earlier metal. And it took me a very long time to find a group of former like geeks, metalheads who have created a community that's very inclusive of women specifically, and they do not tolerate any kind of homophobia or any kind of exalting of the musicians that would have demonstrated that. And it is a great little microcosm that, to me, tells a story about, you know, what it means when somebody creates intentional community, and who you discover when you make a space more nurturing for people. Because the owner of the group is like, look at all the women who are here. I've never seen this many women interested in metal music. And it's like, oh, we were interested. We just didn't feel like it was safe. So when I look at the SCA, and as complex and big as we are, I think about that. And I think about, okay, I feel safe in this place. And what do I need to do to ensure that other people feel that too? You know, what subtle things and not so subtle things can I do? So, and I think these conversations really help, Eleanor, you know, and the fact that you're willing to be open about what you experienced. So.
I like your phrasing of, we can create the culture that we want. I've been doing some reading on like the culture of consent and kind of developing that and trying to brainstorm ways that we can bring that into the SCA more. So, yeah, I like your phrasing of that. That's great.
Well, phrasing's cheap. Action, that's what I really do. So, what do you think, Dawn? Do you have a question for our guest?
I want to ask you all about your gardening and what you have going on with that, which takes us totally in a different direction.
I love it.
How much time do we have?
Right?
So, how did you get interested in gardening and doing period gardening things?
Oh goodness. It was so I have a master's in ecology, and so I've always been a super plant geek. Love gardening, and actually Attila and I moved out here for the climate. We had a bunch of things that we were looking for, and they all happened to end up being within the Willamette Valley. And we were like, okay, I guess that's where we're moving. We didn't have a thought at all about SCA at that point in time. We're just like, we're moving here. And yeah, so then just started really gardening a lot. And then it's always kind of funny. You were always, you hear this mythos in the SCA of like, you just like stumble across your passion and your love, and that'll just drive you forward. And for the longest time, that was dance for me, and studying Persian and Kathak, which is a North Indian dance form, and blew out my back. And so that was done for me, right? It was like, you either get to walk or you that kind of duality of decision. And so then I thought, yeah, stumbling through just kind of SCA-ness. And then all of a sudden, like, I realized I was just reading some random garden book. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's this plant called skirret, and I'm growing it, and I've been growing it for a few years. What else is going on in here? And then I'm like, oh, I'm doing that, and I'm doing that, and I could do this. And well, I know a lot of the botany that goes on to this. And so it's just kind of one of those really fun kind of stumbled intersectionalities of lifestyle, of, huge garden, big garden, and chickens, that whole kind of homesteadery kind of lifestyle, and then SCA and formal education. It just kind of manifested into this wonderful little geekery niche. And it also timed out well, right? Because, oh, sorry, I'm getting all excited.
Do it, go!
And it's also timing out amazingly with modern research into this specific area, because for so long it was like, we'll talk about the agriculture of it, and yeah, they grew grains, and we'll focus on grains and what they're making money off of. But to actually like pivot and look at the kitchen gardener and what they were actually growing in their own gardens on a smaller scale, and also sometimes a larger, more manor scale, that's really evolved in the last 10, 15 years, a lot of it because of the science, because we can dig into the archaeobotanical remains, both the micro and the macro. So much fun.
Can you tell me how to not kill my houseplants? Is that in your wheelhouse?
I only have houseplants that thrive on benign neglect. So
Okay. All right. Well, then I don't feel so bad.
no, we have some houseplants, like we overwinter citrus, and Attila's like amazing at it. Like he's keeping them moist and the soil rich and this and that. And there's just some that are just like, it's too much. And so I manage the houseplants like the citrus that thrive on 2 weeks of being ignored. And then you're like, oh God. Sorry, little one.
I know. Well, I have a house plant that I tried to kill, like I tried to ignore it, and it made it like grow twice as big. And I think that's the wrong message to send to a person. Like if you really are hard bent on killing this plant, it comes bouncing back. I
Oh,
don't know.
like if you're giving it as a gift to somebody?
Oh, maybe I should give it away. That's actually a good idea. It was a plant that was abandoned in someone's office who got fired, and I couldn't let it just stay there. But I feel like it's a cursed house plant, and it's doing so well now. So if somebody has some philosophical wrapping I can put around, this plant and why I should keep letting it have space in my life, I could use some spiritual guidance.
So there's many unique creatures in the world, and they all require their own specific microclimate. And sometimes they just fall into your life. And if your little particular brand of whoever you are and whatever you can offer is allowing this plant to thrive and grow, I say don't worry and try to, quantify it or label it. Just let it be and enjoy
All
the
right.
beauty that is.
That's fine. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. So, sorry. Okay, the other question I have is, I don't know what skirt is.
Vital.
I know it's a plant. That's all I know.
It is. So I focus on perennials because I'm a lazy gardener. And so perennials are plants that come back year after year.
That's just efficient.
Right?
I don't plant annuals. I mean,
which makes sense because
yeah.
These poor folk that are, scraping by in the Middle Ages, do you think they're going to take the time to no, they're going to be like, oh, there's the skirret patch. There's roots out there when I need it. So anyway, skirrets in the Apiaceae, which is part of the fennel and dills and carrots, all those kind of things. But instead of that one central taproot, it has like this Medusa head cluster of little fingered roots. And then you eat those. And it was really a popular, Tiberius and the Roman emperor, he had it imported in from Germany. It was a big thing. And then when the potato came on the scene, it kind of fell out of favor because all of a sudden with potato, you had a really easy harvestable root that wasn't this tangled mess that you have to wash mud out of. And it also transports well and stores. And so with that, it kind of, in the 1700s, you really start to see the decline of skirret. And there's thankfully little patches that people have preserved mostly for an ornamental, but now there's a resurgence in all the heirloom veggies and fruits. And so.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for that, because I'm sure there's people listening who have no idea what it is. And I'm not going to Google something in the middle of an interview, but I didn't think to do it beforehand. So now we all know.
Yes. It's often called like the forgotten Tudor root vegetable, and I jokingly call it, a lot of the recipes kind of end up, you kind of mush it or you cook it somehow and then you fry it. And so I call them Tudor tots.
I was going to ask, how do you prepare it?
Yeah, there's different ways. You can eat it raw in a salad, and then you can also, but most traditionally it's done like most vegetables in the Middle Ages, is you boil it a couple of times and then you fry it.
Okay. It's a good place to collect salt and oil, it sounds like. So
exactly. It's a fried carb.
Fried carb. Beautiful. I love it. Skirret fries. I'm sure we could come up with skirret slaw. Let's work on this. Give me a handful of them and I'll come up with 5 recipes. That I can tell you. So I'm going to pull us a little bit back over in the direction of your experiences reigning, because I'm super curious about how your reign as princess was different from your other reigns. And what I'd like to do is put up your photos and we can talk about that, because I think a lot of folks watching are probably from Montier and would love to know, how those experiences contrasted for you. And also how living in the summits maybe is different from where you've lived, what makes it special for you now that you've had some chance to settle in. So I'm going to switch us over to the photos though, so we can kind of keep it going. So as always, let's see if I do this correctly. Yes. Okay. And there you are. Look at you.
Oh. Yep. There's the Norman geek girl.
That
Aw.
trim that trim that you have on your dress, I bought some of that when I first joined the SCA too. I had some clothing trimmed out with that as well.
I love dating SCA clothing. I think it's the most fun thing ever, like to go through somebody's closet that's been playing for a while and be like, oh, so this was 1996, and oh, this was the 2000 aughts, and I got that trim from Callantyre trim and 2010.
I love it. And I'm actually back now to using modern trim a lot because I embellish it. And so it's a really nice template for beadwork and pearls and things like that, because I just simply don't have the time I used to sit down and like make a fancy like long strip of something embroidered. So I will use it as the base for fancy embellishment, and use it to add texture to a piece and that sort of thing. So I have no I don't look down my nose at store-bought trim at all. And I think there's some really great stuff available now. It's not all just shiny, polyester the way it was, 30 years ago. So,
and even if it is and you enjoy it,
do it.
Do it.
Just don't stand too close to an open flame. That's all I ask. Please don't melt yourself. Permanently embed your trim into your body. So, and look, I didn't make any trim jokes as we talked about that. Oops, there I made one. So anyway, so what's the span in years between these photos?
I think that's 1998-ish, maybe 90, no, 96. That's 96 to, 2016, 17. Yeah, so
Awesome.
20 years.
I love it.
Oh, crap. Don't do the math. Move on.
I love it. I love it.
Yay. So just a quick thing is my brain's wired a little differently. And so after a few years of speech therapy, I've gotten better at telling coherent stories, but I'm not very good at it at all. And so I'm kind of going to use these pictures as prompts to kind of help keep me on track, but please feel free to interrupt or ask other questions and merrily distract me away. So if I don't make logical sense, I apologize. Ask questions, I will clarify.
Or we won't know that you're not making sense. That's also something about Dawn and Ashaxi and myself, where we're like, okay, that sounds good. So we'll all be a neurotypical or non-neurotypical cluster together here. So.
Yeah, so I think this was 98. This was Melvin and Lillian's reign. I started off as the head lady in waiting and ended up head of retinue. So they were really great, for in there like, hey, this person likes water bearing and gets along really well with the fighters, and they seem to enjoy their company. It might be possible that they're gonna reign eventually. So let's start getting them trained up in what court life is all about. And so that's kind of this one. And then it was very meaningful for me because I learned a crap ton, both just administratively what goes on in reign, and then also like emotionally what can happen, although you're never really prepared, right? And then Lillian gave me her Queen's Grace, and that's the little rope I have on my shoulder there, which was an important little thing for me. But that's all. Ta-da! And then it happened. So I don't know if this is the first or the second one. I think that's Balthazar, their heralding. But yeah, so yeah, there's me being Queen of the Outlands.
Cute.
I don't really have much more. Green and gold, go Hardies. So, and then so this is Kayer, and whew, when I could not do an interview about Grace without including her. She is like my pinnacle of grace. And so when you think of like who you want to grow up to be, or when you're floundering in those moments, she's one that I think of.
Yeah.
So, and I was very fortunate, and we were on some retinues together. Cameron and Annalise's, we got to know each other very well, and then she and her husband there were kind enough to be on my retinue, and they were just brilliant, amazing, and supportive. Because right, brains are like pressure cookers, and if you have a great relationship and you know, good communication and everything, it just like pressure cooks and turns into a beautiful, tasty stew. But if there's like a crack or something's off, it will just explode into a hot mess. So they were very helpful in managing the hot mess that was. Yeah, okay.
I think that's a great point, and sometimes it just takes somebody who's a mediating or moderating presence, you know.
Yeah.
So, and you know, it's not about containing the pressure, it's about making sure there's a positive outlet for it, or you know, some people are just really good at that, you know, making sure that things can develop without being stifled.
Or like safety nets and you know, calm ports in a storm kind of places.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah. Well. Yay! It's Damon when we were all just a bunch of young punks. Now he got all fancy. He's Duke Damon. So, oh my goodness, he's such a sweetheart. So at this point in time, him and Sean and Timmer were coming over a lot from Artemisia. And he asked permission to fight in my Queen's Champion tourney. And so I said, sure, why not? And oh my goodness, he just comported himself with such, well, just demonness, right? Just the amazingness that he is. And so I awarded him the Shield of Chivalry for that day. And it was fantastic. He was just so lovely. During that reign, my Queen's Champion had a lot of life happen, right? And life always takes priority. And I fully appreciate that and understand that. And Damon just kind of stepped into the role, and, you know, he was fantastic throughout that reign. We really formed some good friendship for that, and which was quite the scandal because he was also the Queen's Champion of Artemisia at the same time. So
I love the idea of SCA scandals that are based on things like that. It's like,
yeah. So no, he asked her permission and they got it all sorted out, but it was fun. No, yeah, so this is, I don't know which one this is. It's all a blur. Because we did back-to-back reigns, right? And so at that point in time, it just kind of all blurs together. But this one to highlight, there's just some fantastic folks in here. The Beaufort from up north is represented. I think that's Bjarki and with his hair. I don't know who's in the lobster tail. And then that is the most wonderful Patrick. And he has this voice that just, you know, it just makes everything right in the world. And so it's just, he was a total sweetheart. And but one of the things with this, you can tell I'm kind of sitting there awkwardly because part of the heralding of, you know, the king and the queen is, you know, king by right of arms and queen by grace and by beauty. And Patrick had this amazing way of saying it, of grace and of beauty. And it was just gorgeous. And you brought so much joy to everyone. But that phrasing, it took me a really long time to get used to the concept and what I could make that phrase that's applied. And so many people have so many preconceived notions of what victory by beauty is. I mean, that's just kind of a bizarre concept in and of itself, and how I, in my personality, could fit in that and live in that space. So
Mm-hmm.
I still work on it for sure. And so this is my rosing. Gonna be 21 years old in November. But behind is Elishava, Catherine, and Monica. And definitely, woo, so many memories, my goodness.
Well, if we can all be vaccinated by November, we should take your rosing out for drinks, since they'll be 21.
Oh, that sounds like a plan.
That'd
What
be
could
awesome.
possibly go wrong?
Yeah, nothing at all.
But anyway, so some hallmarks of roses and the outlines that you always want to grow up and become.
Yep.
Yeah. And so then after that, the next picture.
Okay.
Sorry, Melvin, this is your just off the field, salt in your eyes face. But it sums up the next 15 years of my SCA life was holding parasols for royalty. I'm really good at it. I'm tall, so I can get the parasol up nice. Yeah, so I had a lot of fun doing the whole royal courtier kind of thing. Yeah, it was fun. Went to a lot of foreign wars, helped out with a lot of big kingdom feasts and escorting fancy folks here and there. You kind of form these cohorts, and so you get to know each other and get to hang out as a little, cohort amoeba-esque.
There's a market in Ontario for actual umbrellas that look convincingly like parasols, and they're remarkably hard to find. So if some enterprising person out there wants to make waterproof parasols, not umbrellas, they can't be metal and look terrible. They have to actually look like parasols. We would start buying them like you would not believe.
There's somebody out there that has them, because I almost bought a couple for my rain, for the Summits rain. And but oof, they're expensive.
Yes, but also like I'm saying, an enterprising person. Maybe somebody can make super skookum waxed ones, or anyway, somebody listening needs to work on that, because Ontarians, as much as they say they issue umbrellas, once we have silk on, we're not going to issue your umbrellas then, let me tell you. So, and we need parasols too, so it's a win-win. This is a great photo.
Yay, it's Bree, the most amazing Bree. So this is another one of my role models of people that I hope to grow up to be. So for me, she is the epitome of, there's that phrase of straighten somebody's tiara or crown. And so she definitely does that. Or she's also really good at snipping threads off of your new outfit. But is that she has this beautiful subtle support that she offers, and she never makes a big deal out of it or calls you out on it. She's able to help course correct while making you feel more, right? She never lessens. And that's something that I really, really greatly admire and appreciate and try to be like. Just, always that kind of more lifting up and never squishing. So, I'm sure we were plotting something amazing here with astounding outfits. Yay, and North Shield. So I was in North Shield 23, 29, which is right when they were transitioning from Principality to Kingdom. And so that was pretty impressive to witness, just that whole transition period. It was really an intense time period for them. And but Stefan and Elena were wonderful and welcoming, and they really valued my input and help. And so I got to use my Duchy superpower for good, and made all the matching guard tappers. I love the matching livery And so there's like some picture floating out there in North Shield of this whole crew in like 12 or 14 matching guard tabards, and it just looks so sharp. I love that. Also like made up some huge silk painted banners for them to take with them, and kind of helped with some other aspects. And in recognition, they gave me an augmentation of arms.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
But it's always lovely to feel part of something bigger than that.
Yep.
And this is Giovanna, another fantastic human in my life of SCA-ness. So Giovanna, she's known as G, and Eleanor, I was E, and together we bring good things to life. But anyway, so she saved my bacon a couple of times. She jumped in at the last, when I was frantically finishing the guards tabard, she came over and helped sew those up for so many other times. And this was at a Rose tourney. And so I event steward the first Rose tourney. I don't know if North Shield's still doing it or not, but it was a Rose tourney, and it was a really good, the event itself was, it was like the epitome of like Victorian chivalry with pennants flowing in the air and matching livery, because everyone just like went out and like each rose, and I think we had some baronesses had their matching livery. It was just fantastic, and very chivalric fights and good comportment. But it was, I think North Shield was still a little proto and new. There was a lot of people, and so those, both the people participating in the tourney were also the people wrangling the event. And so it stretched everybody a little too thin. So it was a good lesson for me of sometimes, pause and reflect where and how you are, and don't push for something that may not be the best at that time and place.
Yeah,
It was a great event. Ta-da! And then now we're in Ontario. So when I left North Shield, there were a few things that really disillusioned me to the SCA, and I was just like done. I was salty, just burn the bridges as I left. There's some, it wasn't a good time. There was, for some reason, like what we were talking about earlier, right? There's just some grumpy people, and some people were like telling lies and slander. It's just, you're like, why? And why would I want to be part? Anyway, so
and all kingdoms, all groups
yeah,
have that at some point. I think and how you weather it and come out the other side really says a lot about the people involved, and, can people be that way or see it happening and come out better for it or not? So, because some groups get broken before they get good. On tier, we have had plenty of that. And sometimes when people are complaining about things here, I'm like, oh, wait, you don't understand. This is the goods. You're seeing the good stuff, even though it may seem really awkward or that people take too long to make decisions or whatever it is. That's in contrast and an improvement over the way things were. And it's okay. Like, we all accept that this is the way, we're going to do things because the other way hurt us, or whatever. So I think any group can come back from something if they decide to, if they decide to do better.
and even if they're doing better, they might even be able to do more better.
Right, than a group that never had problems.
Right.
I think that that's actually really true. And, it's sort of like in any interpersonal relationship, I'm sure we've all experienced this, where either you're dating someone or you have a friendship and you have some kind of a conflict or fracas come up and you're stronger after. And so I always look, when a group is struggling, I'm always like, hey, you have a really cool opportunity here to be better than you could have been without this. So anyway, I don't know the details. I'm just kind of being philosophical about the way the SCA,
Love it.
how we manage that can really
let it fade with time.
Yeah. Yeah. Or be better. Yeah.
Yeah. So I dealt with it I retired to the countryside. I call it my Mary Boleyn phase, in that very Philippa Gregory is like, I survived court with my head, and now I'm going to go hang out in the countryside with my, valiant, true-hearted knight.
just love that
organic garden.
this event looks like it's being held in someone's garage across the street from another person's house.
Well, it is. And so this is it's a site with some contention, rightfully so, about it, but it's one site that is available outside of Salem that has a big horse arena and barn. And so in the past, when events were held, it was often utilized. So that's what's happening. This was a tea, but this group of people here, they totally sparked the SCA joy again, and just by their leadership and comportment, with Shea and Brecca and Vesta, and then Seamus over there, my dad to be. Yeah, it was just like through their examples and being welcoming nature, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe let's try this again. Yeah.
I do like that Shea looks like she's about to pick her nose and you look like you're crying at the
No, well, see, I think that was my
propriety.
Like, you're saying what? And then she's like, ooh.
I like my story, and I think Shea would support me in this version, who is apparently crown princess in this photo, so that's even better.
Yeah, I think this is when Brecca and Sver stepped up and Vesta and Turk stepped down. No, it's so romantic. Yeah, and so then Attila and I decided that, yeah, we would be interested in playing again. We were in a point in our life where we realized that, you know, our personal and our finances, our jobs, our, you know, just general lifeness was in a place that we could reign. And we heard that there was only 6 people entered in the Coronet list, and we're like, oh, let's go just to show support. And
boom.
Ta-da! We did the thing you're not supposed to do. And yeah, and we're just super, super thankful. Even though we had some experience in the SCA and our life was ready for it, we totally missed having the social network created to support a reign. And so we leaned extremely heavily on some gorgeous and wonderful people like Sver and Brecca and Nye and Tate, Rufus and Torkel and some others that really stepped forward and saved our bacon with that. Aleo and Bree. Berengaria, sorry.
You're getting some love in the comments about how people are glad you showed up that day to fight. So that's really sweet.
Cool.
So yeah.
Oh my goodness, I love this. I love Attila, and I love reigning with him. It was awesome. Like this picture kind of sums it up, you know, just very happy tossing, you know, standard role reversal back and forth, and just gorgeous. So this was Antir West War, and you know, this was my only chance to be a princess, and so of course I was going to be Princess Leia, right? And he was Prince of Karelia. We had all sorts of fun. We had, you know, 3D printed medals of valor or bravery of Yala. I know I'm going to mess up my SCA and people are going to squinge at me. And but and there were people that had a photo booth, Linka, and then her son, who was the current Terra Pomeria champion, he showed up in a full stormtrooper outfit. And the kids just went wild. And they ran around, and we had glow sticks and boffer weapons made up like lights. Oh, it was fun. And it was just like 2 hours of kids screaming and running around in a field. It was really fun.
That sounds awesome. When I was Princess of Sinagua, I was our Coronet event was on Halloween weekend. So, which is typically the case. Like there's a really good chance that Halloween is when that event falls. And I love Halloween more than any adult probably should. And so we did trick-or-treating on the tourney field, and which is really, really fun. But if I could have had a Star Wars party and trick-or-treating, now that would have been like, that's so much better. I'm super envious.
Yeah, and we had some really fun cosplays that showed up. Like Tati showed up in a big fuzzy tunic, and so he kind of looked very Wookiee-y, and it was just really fun. But one thing I did not account for is how quickly piñatas would go in an SCA trained children's activity.
That's really funny. Though
Yeah.
homemade piñatas, if you do them right, can last a really long time. Ask me how I know. We unintentionally made a piñata that we did not mean to last a long time, and we were literally like stabbing it with things to try and get it to break open. So, there's an art to making a piñata that will open easily. So, and on an unrelated note, my 12-year-old wanted to watch the Star Wars Christmas special recently. And I was trying to explain to him why that was a bad idea. And then we started watching it, and he wanted to know how all of the things that happen in it fit into the canon. Kids these days with their canon. And I was like, it doesn't. And also I had to explain to him when you watch 70s programming, you need to be aware that people were on drugs. And it's a really good reason why you shouldn't take them, because you end up making things like the Star Wars Christmas special. So we had this great conversation about the consequence of drug use, and that some of that, you don't want to leave a legacy if you're taking drugs. So I just thought that you would find that amusing. It's terrible. If you haven't seen it, folks, don't YouTube it. Your life's better without watching it. So even with B. Arthur in it.
Watch the indoor Ewok adventure instead. It'd be equally cringeworthy, but yet a little bit more lighthearted. Yay, Spare, saving the day. So this is like my representation of come in with an empty cup, right? And so this really I tried to get as much download of summitsness as possible, so that I could try to be a good representation of summits. And so before we stepped up, we were going around, we were meeting with all sorts of people, taking counsel, meeting with, past royalty and, this and that. And I think we did okay, but there's a couple of things that this picture represented. This one turned out okay in the end, but right, this is so this is the Shield of Chivalry, and and I'm like, yep, got it. I know what Shield of Chivalries are. And he was great at being like, ooh, Summit Shield of Chivalry are these 4 things, right? And you can be like, yeah, okay, that's right, right? But then there were some other things too, like Viscounty cornets. Having lived in North Shield, I'm like, yeah, silver embattled cornet. That's what Viscounties are. No, not in Ontier. Not the same.
You can kind of wear whatever you want in Ontier, actually, and embattlements are really reserved for countesses and counts. So yeah. So that was there was a few other learning lessons like that, like court coordinator. I never had a court coordinator, right? And I don't know if that's an age thing or a kingdom thing or what's going on, but Nye was amazing. She really saved our bacon so many times. But at first I was just like, yeah, no, I got the award thing. And she's like, but that's my job. And I'm like, this thing exists. Yeah. and working through that. And so there's a lot of things that you had to unlearn to relearn. And I think some of that in Ontier anyway is a legacy of some really significant people who were involved in retinue work. I'm going to mention Kalja, Ula, Bridget. There's others. Those are just the people coming to the top of my head. What's that? Constance, definitely. But who sort of separated out the role of the head of retinue from the court business jobs. And it really made a big difference, because the people who are good at those things, someone who's good at helping with staffing is not the same person who's good at coordinating court. And it also spoke to the way our heralds are staffed, the way court heraldry is done. That the court herald is the person reading the court, but isn't necessarily the person who's coordinating the scrolls and the medallions and everything else. And so there was a gap there in what was needed. And it really helps, because the people who are staffing can really focus on that and keep doing that even when court needs to be done. So I'm not saying this to the two of you, I'm saying it to anyone who's listening, that it is a really, I think, an important and different skill set. And I really appreciate it because it also means for people who don't really necessarily want to stand behind the thrones or don't want to follow the royalty around, there's a really important job and an important function that they need to be doing even when the royalty is not around. And so it can be a great way to separate, and give somebody a job that's really meaningful to them. So yay on tier.
That's all.
Awesome. Okay. So this is gorgeous.
Shea, this is she awarded me the Grace of Antir. And for me, my graces are kind of some of my awards that mean the most to me, right? Because you can do jobs and everything, but she read some of the award recs that people submitted for this award for me, and it was very humbling and very heartwarming because so much leadership or gracefulness is something that can oftentimes just either like be assumed or taken for granted, but to have it called out in such a brilliant way, because it's one of those things that if you're doing it right, no one really notices to some degree. So yeah, so it means a lot to me, that one. Yeah, and especially that came from Shea.
Yeah.
So these are just some fun photos of so another way that we were not prepared for rain is we didn't have garb. Well, we had garb, but it was like 15 years old and threadbare or really outdated. And so I had just a lot of fun making us up a whole new set of garb. And so my garb aesthetic is very much kind of SCA creative. I would go for the look and the silhouette, but however that happens, whether it's like with machine embroidery or other things. Yeah. So, and that's just somebody took that at Great Western War. It's our romance cover novel, romance novel cover.
I love it.
It's hilarious. Next. And then this one, I think if you can tell I was tired, my shoulders are so hunched, but and Attila was supposed to have a belt, but that didn't happen because that day was a little excited. But I think that one, you could almost make into a brass effigy to some degree with the dog at your feet anyway.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the Grace of Antir. I actually had to look it up. That's a totally new award for us. It started in 2017 and you were the 5th person to get it. So that's kind of cool.
Very honored. It's one of my faves. So yeah.
Is that your dog?
Yeah, everyone was so kind during the rain to let us bring our dog around. And I know some people did not care for dogs, and I apologize for that. But
he looks like a little lion. It's awesome.
Oh, he was so sweet. And I promised the kneeling cushion was not marred or damaged by him utilizing it the few times he did. But it was so hilarious. So after we stepped down, we were at an event, and Waylon was set up as Baron of TP. And there's a throne and the presence and a kneeling cushion, and our dog is like, oh, well, this is where I lay down. Flops himself in front of the throne. So like, oh.
Clearly that's a dog bed.
Right.
He's like, I got this, I got it. 6 months of this, I'm on it. Yep, some more dresses. So some people said that they like my design aesthetic, and so this is my Gothic fitted gown, and it's a 4-panel, and you can just mix and match it to make it look all sorts of different things. And then the checky one was my quarantine project. So it was fun to break out the rotary cutter and get with the checkies again.
I love how you pieced it all together to make it.
I know.
Yeah. As people have heard us say before, it's a rite of passage to create checky. Once you've made Antir checky, we get to keep you forever.
Yay. Oh yeah, and I had a a lot of experience with Czechis, not only from like the modern quilting, but there was a household I was remotely kind of affiliated with, and I ended up sewing a lot of Czechis for those members of that household. And so I was like, Czechis, yeah, I got this. With a rotary cutter, I got this. And then this is just fun. It's Torkel's Viking biker jacket. So I think it's let's have fun. There's a time and place for being super authentic, but there's also a time and place for having fun. And so I did this big old cut work on the back of his coat, and he has a lot of fun wearing it, and that's what matters. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah, he's not helping though with the people that look at the Viking TV show and are using that as documentation. So you're right, there's a time and a place, but he wears this way too easily. So Torkil, I'm looking at you. Maybe you should sew some period clothes, and let's see how you do. I can flip him crap. It's okay. So, but it does look really good. Had you done a lot of leather work before you did this, or was this a new skill for you?
I had done, and this is pleather.
Okay, all right. That puts it in perspective too.
Yeah, it's all polyester fun. But yeah, so there was an event where a group of guys wanted to go in kind of like biker jackets, and so I did a couple of those. I did checky leathers, edge cuts, those two. So this was actually kind of simple compared to some of those other things that I've done. So yeah.
I love it. It reminds me of that. Was it a Kirk Douglas movie, The Vikings? In a good way, because I love that movie, and I think the costuming in it, like when you look at a lot of the costume movies that were being done at the time, it actually is kind of like the atmosphere they were trying to create with it is very different, but it's still like I can see some echoes here, so I love it.
Okay, and then so time and place. And
I know,
so
wait, I want to do a contrast. There, there, to there, to there, to there. Okay, all right, we're good. Just doing a little palette cleansing. So
yeah, I mean, embrace the diversity of what authentic and creative means to you. And so this is one that I've done for a recent project, and that's actually what's hanging up behind me here is so yeah, anyway, I did a stained cloth. Both because Ruth Goodman does it in the Tudor monastic farms, and so of course we want to do everything that she does, and I needed it for a garden project, but I thought this was an opportunity to do it like totally to the T. And so it's linen, hand stitch, rabbit sized, oxide paints. I made all the pottery except for the big white bowl, including the chafing dish and everything, and then Nemo made the spurtle, which worked perfectly for stirring the size. Yeah, so
you said rabbit something, and I didn't know what it meant.
Rabbit skin glue. You use it as a size.
Glue made out of rabbit skin.
Yeah. So it's called size, and it's what you kind of like prep canvas for before you paint it.
Got it.
They also use it in bookbinding.
Got it.
That makes sense because it hardens. Like this is really crunchy.
I'm a vegetarian, so anytime a glue or something is amended with a type of animal, I'm always like, ooh, remind me not to lick that. But I realize too that doesn't necessarily mean it's still made out of that animal, but just don't tell me. That's fine. I don't need to know.
I made something really period with period tools.
That's super cool. Did you do you have a pottery studio at home?
I have a wheel, but I don't have a kiln, and so I normally fire at the craft center affiliated with the university that I'm at, but quarantine, so that hasn't happened for a while.
Very cool.
Yeah, I love this. I saw this photo on your Facebook and had questions, but and what are you making?
The paint. So because of the rabbitness, the glue, you have to keep it warm.
Ah.
So that's a chafing dish in a double boiler, essentially.
Cool. Like with a candle, or what do you use inside?
You put coals in the top.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so the experimental archaeology, I saw this and I mimicked the chafing dish to the size and the shape and everything. And my brain, right, is like you stick a candle in there and there's not enough airflow and the candle fades. And so then I was watching some other show. It's the one where they go through and they make, it's like a costume show on Netflix. She has this awesome like red bob, super severe, and she makes, anyway, they were using one of these medieval chafing dishes or Tudor chafing dishes, and they had the coals on top. And you're like, oh, well, that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense.
I want to know what the name of this costuming show is because I've never heard of it.
Neither have I.
Well, we all binged it back at the beginning of lockdown. Hopefully
Oh, you mean costume show, like it's a show that has a lot of costumes in it.
No.
Oh, it's about costuming?
A Stitch in Time.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bella.
I missed the memo to watch this apparently, so I know.
Do it. It's awesome. They do some amazing stuff. They do the big green velvet gown, or hoopland kind of thing, and that's where they use the chafing dish to set the pleats.
Oh,
It was very tasty.
how cool. Okay, we'll see. I discovered something new tonight. Well, I discovered what skirt is.
You learned what rabbit sizing is,
which is super gross. And I learned about a show that I haven't seen. And I'm sure I will learn many more new things. Let's keep that going. Okay, this is beautiful.
Yay. And that's me bringing gardening joy to the world.
wow.
So before lockdown, I would load up my car full of vegetables and travel around. So, and then that was me presenting at West Coast Culinary Symposium in, was it 2018, 2019, something?
Sorry.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that I was new and I didn't know who anybody was. Cause like now thinking back who was in that room, I would have been scared senseless. And so I totally appreciate people like me, like, what? I can't present in front of these people. Like that feeling, like there's a lot of us that have that. So I encourage you just to go for it. Pretend they're not there.
Well, and just like we were talking earlier about how sometimes newcomers, there's a gap in knowledge, or we assume people know things they don't know. That's true of people who are supposedly at the top of their game as well, that there can be all kinds of gaps in what they know. And or where having somebody else's new perspective or new research becomes really, really crucial to something that they're doing. And I agree, don't ever assume that you don't have something to offer. You have something to offer. And if what you're saying is not factually correct, I mean, there's very little chance of that. The only real risk, I think, is in you may not know everything there is to know before you go in. But that's true of anybody who's in that room. Your personal geekery is probably not going to match somebody else's perfectly to the point where you have nothing to offer them. So I applaud anybody who does this, whether they knew they were doing it or not, and whether they knew the risk or not. Yeah.
There is such a privilege to sit in a room and watch somebody share their joy and their passion about something. And I can tell just from your posture and the expression on your face in this photograph that that's exactly what you were doing. You were like, I love this. Share my joy.
Did you know medieval spinach was different than modern spinach?
And even if it's a subject that I don't care anything about, which is not, I mean, I think what you're doing is awesome. That enthusiasm is what makes the SCA worthwhile to me. And I would love to be in a room with somebody doing that. So if you want to present stuff and be enthusiastic about it, and just remember that the people you're presenting to are basically feeding off of all your energy and really loving it. So yeah, keep that in mind too.
This picture is really fun. This is me dropping the mic.
Boom.
But yeah, so that was, I know. Yeah, so I am, the Summits had the honor of hosting Kingdom ANS in 2019, I believe it was. That's when Seamus won. And, you know, I was trying to rally Summit, let's go, let's enter, woo, and everyone was like, no. I'm like, what's going on here? And so I figured I'd better enter to experience before I as a rose would, try to encourage things, I need to experience it so I fully understand what it was about. Yeah, so it was interesting. It was a lot of work. It was ridiculous. But I think I hope this is the case for everyone, but the support from experts and Laurels was fantastic. At first, I didn't know what in the world was going on. I'm going to enter Kingdom ANS and I'm going to do it about vegetables and pottery. And all of a sudden, you had random emails be like, hello, I am Mistress so-and-so, and I would like to talk to you. And I'm like, what's going on here? And you could totally tell that somebody pulled the deploy the Laurel network system. But it was fantastic. And I encourage other people to enter and know that for me, and I think for many other people now, it can be a very beneficial, growing, healthy, happy experience. And I know that wasn't the case for everyone, but I think,
and you don't have to do the full championship and
yeah, all three. No, I don't recommend it. That was it. And they used to do 5. No, 3 is plenty. Yeah. So
the best arts and sciences type entries I've seen and see are the ones where the person has something to offer and is teaching the people gathered about what they know, and as opposed to defending what they know. And I think that's the advice I always give people. Your knowledge about Scarlet obviously is going to probably be a lot deeper than anybody who's watching, and or a different perspective based on your modern education and experience as well. So you have the opportunity to be a teacher in front of an audience who happens to be evaluating you, but you still can teach. And I love when I see that passion come out in arts and sciences presentations. Also, tell us about the regalia you're wearing.
That's the Summit ANS champion regalia. I love it. I feel like such a kick-ass ANS champion wearing that thing. It was fantastic. Yeah, so Summits has their ANS championship timed for February, and it kind of is like a dry run for Kingdom if you're so choosing to go that direction. And it worked out brilliantly because I entered, and you only need 2 in the Summits, but I entered all 3 for commentary, and it allowed me to make some slight modifications, or look at it from a different angle and see if I did want to make that modification. And yeah,
that's great.
Very cool.
Ta-da! And then I won. And I won the sable bonnet, so that was fun too.
And will you explain what the sable bonnet is for people who don't know?
Yes, it is the floppy hat from the 16th century that I'm wearing with my 14th century gown. That's period. No, so not to demean it in any way. So with the rubrics, and I adore the rubrics. Thank you for the rubrics. They are fantastic. No more random, bizarre judging comments. We have some fairly agreed upon scaling. But anyway, so if you score above an 80 on your papers or on your entry, you become a Scholar of Antier, which was my one goal for Kingdom ANS. And then the person with the highest score then is awarded the sable bonnet. I think I have that right?
I think so.
You're talking to 2 Laurels who are maybe not the most invested in the way the process works now, just so you know.
So anyway, so I ended up somehow scoring 110 out of 100 on my paper. So I took it to 11.
Well done.
Thank you.
Nice.
I was just excited to have a rubric where I could be like, okay, so if I want to score as high as possible, I need to do these 4 things. And you just do, those things. And, yeah. And then this is been my quarantine. So yeah, so thankfully I have had a stable job and I had a big garden to play in. this past year. And so this is me trying to be ANS champion remotely.
And
So,
how have you done that for people who don't know? I know what you've done, but tell people what you've been doing.
so when it looked like we were going into lockdown, I was texting Seamus back and forth and been like, dude, what are we gonna do? ANS. And he's like, I know. And so I was ready to kind of lead the charge on going virtual with ANS. And so we started up some other things, but the community of Antir was rocking and ready to go. And they just launched forward without anything for me, which was just fantastic. I mean, the amount of classes and YouTube videos, and I mean, it's just been astounding how people have just jumped in full force into the virtual ANS landscape and across the known world. And then also pulling in modern things like this. This is Canal Bala. I cooked with Canal Bala.
For those of us who don't know who that is, can you explain?
Yeah. He is the legend, the myth, the wonder that is. He wrote the book about beans. He's done a lot of the original translations of cookbooks. He is a professor based out of California somewhere. And yeah, so it's kind of like, yeah, being able to jam with Bono or something like that.
What is he brandishing at the camera there?
What's what?
What is he brandishing at the camera there?
Oh, we were cooking gourds. And if you come to Athenaeum, I'll have a display all about gourds. And so it's a bottle gourd. It's one of the original pumpkins, Cuberaceae, pumpkin-ish things that they had before 1492. And so we were cooking it per a Martino recipe from Italy in the 1500s. And we were geeking out online, going back and forth, kind of brainstorming what we wanted to cook. And we landed on this one because it had this fun seasonality of gourds being in season along with the timing of the fennel blossoms. And so it's just kind of like one of those neat things that come up that, you know, all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's why they're combining all these ingredients in this recipe, is because it's in season at this one moment in time. So that's fun.
Wow. Very cool.
And someday I hope to get back to shoveling poo.
I love that you're doing this in your SCA clothes. That's
Yeah. Well, I thought this used to be functional SCA gear. And then, you know, you get out there and you start shoveling poo and you're like, no, this is ridiculous. This is way too low cut and this is not here. And so it's been fun to kind of do the pseudo like living history, experimental archaeology, if you want to call it that fancy, but of just like functional work gear and looking to like the Duke de Berry Book of Hours and their outfits that they're using to pitch 4K and the modification. So I'm still very much, this is, you know, like the Duchess playing at cleaning the stables.
love it. I love that you ended on this too.
Ooh.
The last photo. So it's fantastic. All right. Oops. Stop that. And here we are again. That was just delightful. Thank you so much. We didn't get to the question though of what would you, how would you compare and contrast reigning in the summits to your other experiences reigning, if you would like to address that question.
I've been thinking about that a lot because, yeah, because it was really different. And I was trying to break it down. And I can say, I don't know, because, right, 20-year difference, or almost 20 years difference. So right back in the day, right, we had the 3-ring binders, and Countess Claudia made us our kingdom and our bags, which are these massive bags where you had Papora and Kingdom like all in 3-ring binders because there was no internet at sites. And you know, all the award recs was double entry 3-ring binders. Like, right, and now it's all internet and their social media. And the SCA has evolved in general. And then different kingdoms, you know, principality versus queen, but I don't think there's any comparison. I mean, there's some, yeah, there's just no comparison. It was interesting because in some ways, scope, I think scope was the biggest difference, and that you really kind of truly are more that middle manager person and filling gaps that the king and queen, don't have the bandwidth for with your populace, but really linking into that kind of more 400, 500 group population and helping out with that. And then, being in a position to kind of speak a little bit more truth to power as needed and kind of take that leadership role. But yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of work still.
And you needed new clothes, but thankfully you look really good in blue, so that's a good thing.
That's why I chose it for my heraldry.
Not every branch has colors that people want to wear. It's not always the case that you want to wear, no. So that's good. It's good if you land in that happy accident. So, if you could cast into the future and think about what the SCA is going to look like after the pandemic, what would you speculate? How will things be different moving forward?
So process-y, kind of more tactically, I hope that the online environment continues to persist, and there's some way to leverage what we've learned being remote to enhance our in-person activities or supplement. I think, the accessibility issues that it has allowed or overcome for some it's created some, right? A lot of the folks I interact with the gardening world, they live in remote areas with very poor internet access. And so I think that'll be interesting. Peerage meetings going online. So, peers, especially those that have multiple peerages, can actually do things at events to take relieve a lot of the administrative burden of events and move that online, I think would be brilliant. And then also just the sharing of knowledge across the known world has been really fun. So I hope that can continue in some aspects of it all. On the other side, kind of the more big picture societal side, we're going to have to figure out how we are incorporating a lot of the social justice movements that are going on, and the SCA needs to get their poop in a group. and yeah, because I think as awareness and discussions grow with all of that, if we are not able to figure it out as an organization, I think I almost didn't come back because I was tired of getting groped. I was done with it. I came back because of the community, but now that community might be moving to smaller, other more informal events or online. I mean, I think we're going to really run the risk of losing very key and valuable people, and also our newcomers, if we're not able to figure out these situations. Or yeah. And they're working on it, right? The EDI Council and the anti-harassment and bullying new policies that came out that are much more survival focused, trauma-informed responses and everything. I think they're getting a lot better, but there's more that we can do.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, or decide that this organization is going to age and just disintegrate, that we're going to allow it to just not continue if we don't want to become or maintain relevance for new, people that are coming in that are bringing with them ideals that are more challenging for some of the players that perhaps have gotten really accustomed to the way things were. Especially you mentioned groping in particular, the idea of what consent is and how important it is to ask for consent every time, and to, you know, the way we should talk about other people's bodily autonomy, whether it's kissing a woman's hand in a gross way, or groping someone, or playing up somebody's kilt, or, you know, whatever it is, or just fighters, the way they touch each other when they're training together. I mean, there's lots of things where asking consent every time, and what does that look like, and how do we encourage it, you know, and that's going to be the standard by which newer people coming into the SCA, they're going to expect that. So we have to decide, is that something we want to embrace, or do we want to die? Basically, that's kind of our choice. It's really black and white. So
no, I know I scared off a newcomer, and she was going to be amazing, and she already knew sewing. She was going to rock it. But I was asked to, when I first got here, I was asked to teach a course on courtly graces. And so I went back to my old school training of like, okay, so when you are kissing a hand, this is how you, as the receiver, can control that interaction, right? And if you're dancing, this is how you can control that interaction. And I'm sure she was just like, I got to put up with what if I play? Nah, screw that. I'm going to go cosplay over here. Done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Right. Right. I mean, every organization has challenges. These are ours. We need to be better, or we won't survive. So, yeah.
And it just astounds me that, you know, in a group that's supposed to hold like these chivalric ideals of treating everyone with respect and courtesy and kindness, and that, I don't know, maybe it makes sense with the whole kind of, you know, we're recreating the medieval times. That was a total misogynistic time period. So
Yeah, but it's as it should have been, right?
right, exactly.
And we need to grow the fuck up and learn and be better.
Just like we don't have dysentery, we also should not have consent violations.
Yeah,
It
no,
is.
it needs, there's like so many things that there just comes into point that you're like, no, we're not doing this anymore. This is unacceptable behavior.
Right.
You're out. I don't care what you've done, what you've contributed. If you've crossed this line, you're done.
Right.
Yeah.
Ugh, sorry, I'm getting all fired up.
No, I'm about to jump in on there with you. You know, I have 2 kids that have been raised in the SCA, and I have kept them very well supervised because of my distrust of other people. And I want that to change. I want people to be held accountable. I want people to know that they have to participate in consent-based culture.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they need to be gone.
Yeah.
They need to be gone, because we cannot have a society that is not safe for women, not safe for children, not safe for men even. You know, I know men in the SCA that have been assaulted.
Or non-binary.
Yeah, I didn't mean to
I know.
yes, non-binary people as well. Everybody should feel safe.
That's right.
And we need to be better.
What just pisses me off is that we know a lot of the offenders. We know those missing stairs. Like, I remember my first Penzic, I got pulled aside and they're like, don't go to this camp, don't go here. If you go there, do this. This is here. I mean, or like you move,
Yeah, and saying be careful around this person and relying on warning is not okay anymore. It's not
No.
good enough. It's not good enough.
When I was pretty young in the SCA, so this would have been in the 90s, early 90s, there was somebody who had offered to help me take my stuff to the car. It was full daylight, daytime event, and you know, lots of people around, and 2 or 3 of the guys from the barony I was in were like, oh, hey, we'll help you. And they all walked me out. And then later were like, we just didn't trust him. And I'm like, then why is he at your event? Like, I can remember even at that time being really surprised that, you know, and this was a person who had been a kingdom officer. And so I felt that that it implies that this person is someone that can be trusted to help me take my basket to the car. You know, it's not, when we talk about missing stairs, this is what we're talking about. And, you know, the three of us sitting here as peers have a responsibility to make sure that these types of stories and these observations and the, you know, the passion that we have for this doesn't just stop at talking. You know, we accept that because we're peers, but I will say, other peers out there, there's a lot of you not doing anything, you know, and what do we need to do to make you feel empowered and safe to use your privilege to help make this change? I am willing to do that work with you. So if anybody's watching this, you know, I for sure am willing to talk with you and work with you to make this change, and to help you feel like you have the, you know, some power in this situation, because you do. SCA has given it to you. So, you know, use it, and talk to me if you don't know how to do that. So.
And with that, so check out, Ginevra has an awesome class on the Terra Pomeria YouTube channel of active bystanders training. She calls it Say Something, Do Something.
Yep.
But it kind of walks you down how to de-escalate situations or deal with them, and in a very trauma-informed manner, survivor focused kind of thing.
That's really great. And I will say it is a gift of ADHD, that for a lot of people who have ADHD, they tend to act without thinking. And so the bystander syndrome thing tends to be a bit less of a problem, but what we don't necessarily have are the skills to know what to do once we've stuck our, you know, foot in something and we're like, hey, that's not okay. Uh-oh, now I don't know what to do. So, you know, it is good to actively practice what you will do in those situations. And I, you know, Dawn and I, Shaxi and I have both been in situations where we're like, hey, something is going on here, you know, and Shaxi's a tall person, so she can like use her body literally. I mean, she has a presence. And so she can go into something and say, that's not okay, stop doing that, you know, but I have less, I don't have that. So I usually am like, I want to say something, I want to do something, how safe am I going to be? Or can I rely on people to back me up?
Right.
So yeah, you have to work at it. You have to practice. You have to practice your words. You have to practice your approach. Yeah.
And also, oh, go ahead, Eleanor.
I was just gonna say, and check out the new, I'm losing my words, anti-bullying and harassment policy.
Yeah.
That walks through kind of the steps of, okay, this happens, because for the longest time we didn't have that, right? Something happened, what do? We don't know. We tell the seneschal, do we call the cops? Do we don't call the cops? You know, at what point in time? Yeah, so that's a really good resource to go check out.
Read your rules. And what was I gonna say?
Sorry.
Oh, it went away. No, it's okay. It's gone. It might come back, it might not.
If you think of it, maybe you can just post it in the comments. Somebody was also asking to repeat the name of the YouTube video.
Oh, yeah, so it's Terra Pomeria has a whole series of classes, and Her Excellency Ginevra, I hope I'm saying your name right, Nina, I'm sorry, has a lovely one called Say Something, Do Something. It is based on the active bystander principles, which depending on who you say, there's 3, 4, 5, and like the main 3 are direct. That's like, sorry, I can't say your name.
Shaxi.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Walking in and being like, hey, let's stop this. Direct, right?
Well, I've seen her so many times go, hey, that's not okay. Like that, I hear her voice in my head doing that and saying that. In, you know, when she sees something, she's like, hey, that's not okay. It's like,
yeah, there's distract, which kind of like really helps, you know, you can channel that ADHD, as you were saying, like you can bounce in and be like, oh my goodness, hey, how's it going? How's it going? Have you heard about Spirit? Let me geek out on you about Spirit. Are you uncomfortable and are you leaving yet? You're right.
Yeah.
I remembered what I was going to say. Also work on your ability to recognize situations.
Yeah.
You know, work on your street sense at events. Watch. I'll use Sport of Kings as an example. I watched you confront the angriest stoner ever. And I was like, oh, this is not good. She needs support. And suddenly there was a lot of support.
Oh, are you talking about me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was really ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. So just,
but I couldn't help myself. And that's the thing. Like I say with ADHD, it's like, oh no, I'm going to just go into there and rely on social conventions to protect me. But that may not always happen. And you have to watch and see, is somebody else about to get thrown into a fracas because they're trying to stand up for someone? You can't just say, oh no, somebody's doing something, so that checks that box. You know,
right. Well, that's one of the other D's in the active bystander things is to delegate. And so if you feel unsafe in the situation, or you need somebody that has like 3 peerages,
right,
or muscle or height or whatever you need in that, or grace, whatever you need in that moment, that's when you can turn and be like, I need help. I think something's going south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also, though, that same incident taught me about the amazing skills and the courage and sort of love that a bunch of guys had to de-escalate this situation. Some nights, some not. A bunch of people, and part of what had happened was that this was occurring as people were coming off the fighting field. So a lot of camps were empty or just had, you know, camp people in them, not the dudes that normally you would send into an aggressive situation, or women, the people. And so they were coming off the fighting field. So as this continued to escalate and they became aware of what was happening, there was so much grace in how they handled it, so much dignity. It was really well done. And it made us all feel like this is the right place for us, you know.
It honestly gave me hope, because someone who is a professional at dealing with these de-escalation, who also happened to be a knight, got in and got right in face to face. And then there were these circles of people standing around, making sure that everything was safe, and that if things went really, really south, everything was going to be okay and things were going to be taken care of.
And being conscientious, about the women that were there who were being directly affected by this, which was really important, and also dealing with the police when they showed up.
Yeah.
So that was also really important. You know, it was a fine moment for the SCA, but we need more of those when quieter things happen, like someone is dealing with sexual misconduct, or when somebody is being misgendered, or somebody is, you know, has some not so subtle bigotry being shown towards them. We need to all feel like that's a good time for us to become involved. So
yeah, or if somebody is become too intoxicated and is not behaving towards others in a consensual manner, or is not able to exercise their own bodily autonomy, we need to step in and we need to, you know, take care of that. So
we can make consent cool, right?
Yeah.
If we start off with some of the small things, maybe I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that would be fun to kind of gamify it a little bit. Like
have a consent party.
Have a consent party where that's all everybody's doing.
We're practicing consent.
May I? May I? Yes, you may. No, you may not. Thank you for setting a good boundary. You're welcome. Thank you for your trust. You're welcome. You know, that type of thing. So we could definitely, or make some very, very silly puppet shows, which I think would also be a really good way to do this.
Yeah. It's the
don't
balancing the
do
humor,
that.
but not making a joke out of it because it's
No.
easy to do too. Yeah.
Right, exactly, exactly. Well, we are running out of time here, and I have dogs downstairs who are barking their
Can
heads
I
off.
take 2 minutes to break, or like 2 seconds to break the fourth wall real quick?
Yes.
I think, so for anybody that's out there that's watching this, that is a survivor, we believe you, we love you, and we are here to stand next to you and advocate for you if that is what you want and choose. We're also here to sit by you and support you how you choose to be supported in this manner. So just know that we believe you.
100%.
Yes, that's not breaking the fourth wall. We talk to them all the time. We know they're watching. But thank you for that so much. And it to me is a great illustration of who you are, that you would take the time to talk about that and to talk with us about this whole topic, which is something that we all share a passion for. And at the end of these interviews, normally we put together a virtual gift basket for the person. And in the spirit of the gift basket, you know, great gift basket exchange that happens at all events. But of course, we all have too many baskets. So I think yours would be maybe a poo bucket instead of a basket.
Yes, a Nemo bucket.
Yeah, a really cool poo bucket instead of a basket. And you already have a gorgeous dog, so you don't need like a chance to roll around with puppies or kittens, but maybe a really cool horse experience where you get to ride like a really nice horse.
I'll go visit Orion with Anna. That'd be lovely.
There you go. So we'd give you a little bit of we'd give you a gift certificate to go do that. And I don't actually know what you drink. Do you drink?
Cider usually.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, Washington State is like cider capital. We have
no more Granny Smith. Woo, we got real cider these days.
We have so many good ciders here. So I think what I would choose for you is something really dry, like so dry it almost takes moisture out of your body to drink it. It's a great white wine replacement, but I would probably give you something like that that's a little tart, kind of dry, like our humor. And that's what I would choose for you. So, and I'd get you enough that you can share with a friend hopefully over some kind of geeking happening in your garden. And I don't know, I think maybe the other thing that I would gift you is a chance to force everybody to try Scare It. Not sure how that would happen, but
you don't have to force them. It's so fantastic.
Oh, okay. All right. So maybe what it would be is, without any effort on your part, a Scare It cooking contest at an event. So you could get a whole bunch of people into cooking with it.
Or just a Scare It dish at the Virgin Countess at Sport of Kings.
Ooh, there you go.
Wrong time of year. It has to be a winter activity.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, can it be pickled? No, can't pickle Scare It. All right.
It's okay. We'll figure it out later.
We'll figure it out. Okay, fine. But I think that would be a fantastic gift bucket for you. So Dawn, do you want to add anything to this gift bucket?
Just a big thank you for being brave and standing up.
Yeah, I think so too. So I want to say thank you to my guest, Eleanor de Bolton. We so appreciate you, and to Ashaxi for stepping in once again to be my co-conspirator. We had a lot of fun this evening, but also want to acknowledge that sometimes these hard conversations are really necessary, and the more we have them, the easier it gets. It's just like any muscle that you learn how to flex. So I really appreciate the two of you doing that workout with us tonight. So we have not yet confirmed our guest for next week, but as soon as we do, we will put that up on Grace Under Pressure. I know, hey, and if folks want to make nominations, we're always happy to accept them too. So just sometimes scheduling doesn't work out for folks. So let us know.
Joel will be back next week.
Joel will be back next week, so we can razz him for being gone. I mean, welcome him back with open arms. So thank you everyone who's watching, and we love you. Wear your mask, get the vaccine if you can, and take care of each other, be kind, pay your membership, and we hope to see you in person again.
Love each other. Good night, everybody.